What's happening, Packer fans? Welcome into the Pack a Day podcast. Happy Victory Monday. I'm your host, Andy Herman. You can follow me on Twitter at Andy Herman NFL. Packers get a big 17-0 win over the Seattle Seahawks. I don't think this is exactly the game that we were expecting. We were expecting Aaron Rodgers versus Russell Wilson. I hope you pick the under and not the over, as maybe a lot of people could have easily expected with those two quarterbacks. But in a day when you have Russell Wilson and Aaron Rodgers, the best throw of the day, of course, was Carlos Dunlap throwing a shoe. Go figure. This was not exactly a offensive juggernaut battle from either side. Green Bay's defense does a tremendous job holding Russell Wilson and the Seahawks to 0 points and really kind of shuts their offense down through the entirety of this game. And for the Packers, you could tell Aaron Rodgers coming back, the offense just looked a little disjointed. Rodgers wasn't exactly himself. And I think both of these quarterbacks coming, off of some extended absences, I think played a part into this as well. But definitely an interesting game, but one that goes in Green Bay's favor, as again, they pick up a 17-0 win. I had the pleasure, as I mentioned later last week, of actually being in the stadium, back in my seats. You get end zone seats, so I kind of get the all 22 as I'm watching it live, which is always really fun, kind of seeing what Russell and Aaron are seeing down the field. Just the atmosphere at the game was absolutely amazing. Of course, Lambeau Field cold. You get the first snow in Green Bay of the season, and it happens on game day. And again, a tremendous atmosphere. Crowd was good. I thought everything was really great. I did, as I posted up on Twitter, for the very first time in 30 plus years, get asked to sit down after a third down play, of course, where, they're literally asking the crowd to stand up and make noise. So that was my first time. And it's funny because I always hear these stories and people say, oh, the crowd in Lambeau is so terrible. And I've seen a couple things here and there, but I've never been asked to sit down or really heard of it. And a couple things I thought maybe it was Milwaukee, season ticket holders. I don't know. Maybe it just wasn't my section. Maybe I had a really good section for the past 30 years. I didn't know, right? But I definitely didn't, I definitely knew these things happened. It just, I never saw it with my own eyes, despite going for 30 plus years. But lo and behold, sitting right behind me, and again, after a big third down, asking me to sit down, and I just kindly turned to them, laughed at them, and said, there's no effing way. And here's the thing, right? My section's pretty cool about stuff, and what I mean by that is it's not like the entire... Now, in playoff situations, yes, everyone's standing the entirety of the game, but for the most part, in a regular season game, there's... when the offense is at work, you're generally sitting down unless there's a play in the end zone where you're trying to see and things like that. If the play is far on the other side of the field, for the most part, we're kind of sitting. We're still making noise, and everyone does a really good job in our section of making noise. But again, for the most part, it's a smart crowd. Like everyone in our section is sort of standing at the right moments. It's not standing at inappropriate times. It's not sitting when you should be standing. People are standing in the big moments where they really should be standing, no more, no less. So for anyone to get upset at that specific, and I think the really great thing is I was able to tell her after, I'm like, you can literally hear them on the Jumbotron saying, stand up, get out of your seats and make noise. So I was able to point and say, they're literally asking us to stand up. And then the person said, well, I guess I understand that. And then she said, no, I don't. And then I'm like, all right, I don't care. And then we continue to stand, in big moments the remainder of the game. But other than that one small iota and my first experience with being told to sit down at Lambeau Field, fantastic experience, fantastic game, great crowd, awesome environment. And again, if you have not been to Lambeau Field, make it a must happen situation. I know sometimes people feel like, well, if I don't have season tickets, I can't get tickets. That is not the case. You can absolutely find tickets. Might have to pay a little bit more here and there, but for the most part, you can definitely find tickets, and it is worth it no matter what you pay. It is absolutely worth it. I don't take it for granted anytime I'm in that stadium, and this was another just fantastic atmosphere, and loved every second of it. So let's get into the actual game in and of itself, though. Excuse me. Let's start on the defensive side of the ball, because listen, anytime you hold a team scoreless in the NFL, and I don't care if it's some third string quarterback, I don't care. If you hold a team scoreless, you have done an incredible job in a game. And when you hold the Seattle Seahawks scoreless with Russell Wilson, with DK Metcalf, with Tyler Lockett, with Gerald Everett, with that entire team and how good that they are, I know that maybe they haven't been the most explosive. I don't care. Like, this has the ability to be a very talented team. They have plenty of weapons on offense, and Green Bay's defense was nothing short of fantastic in this game. And yes, Seattle had a couple opportunities they could have maybe taken advantage of, and they didn't. But don't take anything away from the Packers defense. I thought they played, once again, fast, intense football. And if all you need to do to see where this defense is at right now, go to the very last drive of the game. 17-0, 2 minutes less, less than 2 minutes left. There's not much left to play for, right? That defense wanted that shutout. They were still ball hawking. Preston Smith got the sack. That defense still cared. If there's one trait that I can tell you about the Packers defense right now, they care, they are motivated, and they hustle. This is a team that is playing 11-person team defense, all flowing to the football, on the same page, playing together, and it is fun to watch despite not having Jair Alexander and Zadarius Smith, and in this game for portions of it with no Rashan Gary and so on and so forth. I could not be more impressed with the job that Joe Barry's done. And as Matt LaFleur pointed out in his post-game press conference, this is a week-to-week league, right? So maybe the next 4 weeks they give up an average of 30 points a game, and we're saying, the defense is terrible and whatever, right? But what I said last week, and I still believe to be true, the things that this defense is doing and putting on tape is repeatable. The effort, the hustle, rallying to the football, playing together, being on the same page, communicating well, all those sort of things. And when you do that stuff well, it's tough for you to have low lows. And, as Mike Wall talks about, you want your highs higher, you want your lows higher. You're trying to consistently get better. And right now, I believe that the Green Bay's lows on defense will be much higher because of those things that they're doing down in and down out. And you can tell that this really matters. They want to be a good defense, and it is translating into actually being a good defense. A shutout against Russell Wilson and the Seahawks. And oh, by the way, they now held Mahomes, Murray, and Wilson to a combined 34 points in 3 weeks. That's an average of 11 points a week. Again, Kyler Murray, Russell Wilson, Patrick Mahomes, that is incredible. This is the first time Russell Wilson's been shut out in a game in his entire career. This is the second week in a row where Green Bay's held their opponent, again, Chiefs and Seahawks, Mahomes and Wilson, to under 4 yards per play on offense as a whole. Both the Chiefs and the Seahawks under 4 yards per play on offense, which is incredible. You put all the stats together for Kyler Murray, Patrick Mahomes, and Russell Wilson, again, 3 of the top tier quarterbacks in this league, 62 out of 110 for 56.3% completion percentage, 601 yards. That's an average of 200 yards per week, 1 touchdown, 4 interceptions. Again, Murray, Mahomes, Wilson, 62 of 110, 56.3 completion percentage, 601 yards, 1 touchdown, 4 picks. That's incredible. And again, you might say, well, the Cardinals were on a short week and Hopkins was banged up, and the Chiefs weren't the same, and that offense isn't the same explosive offense. Russell Wilson's coming back off. Look what the Raiders in the Chiefs game this week. Look what the Chiefs did to the Raiders. 40 plus points. Mahomes threw for 5 touchdowns. That's what that offense has the ability to do any given week because they're that explosive. And Green Bay didn't do that. They held them tough. They held them tight and made that game competitive despite Green Bay basically doing nothing on offense. This defense has been great, and they are trending in every right direction possible. And what they've done against those 3 quarterbacks to allow Green Bay to come out with 2 wins. And is there any real question that if Aaron Rodgers was playing against Kansas City and that defense played the same, that's another win for Green Bay, and they'd be 9-1 right now? I don't think that's a hot take in any way, shape, or form. So kudos to the way that Joe Barry has this defense playing, and just the way that these players have really rallied together and started playing some amazing football. And how did they do it in this game? Per NFL stats, Green Bay played 6 or fewer defenders in the box on 97% of the plays in this game. So those are very, very extremely light boxes. In fact, that was the second highest percentage of plays with 6 or fewer defenders in any game on defense this entire season. So Green Bay basically dared them to run the football, and they couldn't do it or wouldn't do it. I thought Green Bay's defensive front, even TJ Slayton was resetting the line from time to time. I thought Lancaster had a couple nice stops. Kenny Clark, of course. Thought the linebackers played well. But when you're playing a 6-man box, you had better stop the run, because otherwise that safety's got to come down. That safety's got to come down to the point where Chris Barnes even said in postgame, listen, our defense is holding up so well on the front that even when Seattle's going play action, our safeties are still able to stay back. And that is huge. If your safeties don't have to take those false steps up, then you can still continue to play over the top, and that limits DK Metcalf, and that limits Tyler Lockett, and that allows your corners to be more aggressive underneath. And if you're playing zone, keep your eyes, jump throws and things like that, because you've got two safeties playing well behind you, and they're going to be able to get the angle that they need to make a play on the ball, which we saw in this game on multiple occasions. So love the way that defense is playing. Love the game plan that they had for Seattle. And we're seeing in NFL right now where if you're not willing to run the football or can't run the football against a 6-man box, you're going to have a hard time winning in the league. Everyone's playing two-man shell and playing far off and making sure that there's no explosive plays. If you're seeing 6-man boxes and you can't run the football, or you won't run the football, you're going to struggle to put up points right now. It is a different NFL than we've seen over the past few seasons, and you better have a plan to run the football. Speaking of running the football and the offensive side of the ball, I thought the offense struggled in this game, and I thought a lot of this was just due to Aaron coming back and being rusty. I thought he missed a couple throws that he normally makes. Of course, the poor interception in the end zone had the play to Devontae on the first drive that could have potentially been picked. Just some uncharacteristic plays from Aaron. But I think my larger takeaway, and let me start by saying I think the biggest thing here was just Aaron coming back and reassimilating himself in the offense. I don't have any major concerns with the offense moving forward. I do think the offensive line needs to get better. I do think they will get better when David Bakhtiari comes back, and hopefully things solidify a little bit. But I do think we're to the point now in the season where I don't think Green Bay's found its identity yet, and I don't think they found their rhythm yet. And I think that's something that Green Bay really has to work on. And as far as identity goes, I think a part of that is, what do you want to be on offense? What do you want to accomplish? And I think, we saw for a little while that the identity was really, establishing Devontae and to an extent Aaron Jones. Obviously Jones, had the injury, and we'll get to that in a moment, but I just don't think that that's an identity. And I think, the Matt LaFleur offense starts with the stretch zone run game, and the outside zone, I should say, and they need to figure out a way, and then based off of that, you're doing bootlegs, and then you're building the offense entirely off of that. And I haven't seen that same Matt LaFleur offense where one play leads to another later, and you have this balanced attack, and everything's playing off and complementing each other. I haven't seen that. I've seen more spamming play calls where you're trying to, get it to Devontae, or where Rodgers is changing things at the line and taking quick smoke screens to the outside. And inherently that stuff isn't necessarily bad, because what Rodgers is doing is taking situations where, there's a call run right, and there's, Devontae to the outside, and the corner's playing off, so you've got a quick smoke screen to the outside. They're overstacking the box, so you snap it, quick throw to Devontae, and he's able to pick up 3, 4, 5 yards, and that's better than a run play, right? And certainly better than running into a crowded box where you're trying to run the football. So inherently that stuff's not bad, but I do feel like it's almost at the expense a little bit of what Green Bay's trying to develop with any sort of rhythm or complementary football on offense. And I just don't think we've really seen this Matt LaFleur offense in the way that we expected, or the way that it's intended. And I think they've got to find that rhythm and identity over the course of the next few weeks to get back to that point where they were playing and having such an amazing offense last season. A lot of that was red zone offense, which Seattle's really good at red zone defense. We saw some of that in this game, but I still think Green Bay needs to find a little bit more rhythm, a little bit more identity, a little bit more consistency. I do think it starts up front. I thought the offensive line had a pretty good game. I'll be excited to watch it on the All-22, but I think they can be better. I think Aaron can certainly be better than he was in this game, and I just think they have to find a little bit more rhythm and consistency and identity. All right, let's talk about the bad news. Green Bay cannot get out of a game without some fairly big injuries to some fairly big players. Now, I think we ultimately actually got some fairly good news based off of what it potentially looked like. I think there was some fear there that maybe Green Bay lost Jones, Mercilus, and Rashan Gary for significant time. It doesn't look like that at the moment. Some of this is still preliminary, but Tom Silverstein was able to confirm that Aaron Jones has his fourth MCL sprain. He missed 2 games in 2017 with a left MCL. He had 2 other MCL sprains that were towards the end of the season, so tough to tell if he would have missed time. I'm sure he would have missed some, but tough to tell just how much. And now this is his 4th one, and we will see, but I would expect him to be out at least 2 games, probably more than that, but we'll kind of get an update on that as the week goes along. He could be an IR option, but it's going to be up to AJ Dillon and Patrick Taylor for the upcoming future. What a bummer that Kylan Hill is hurt, because you'd love to see some more Kylan Hill in this situation, but of course he's out for the year with an ACL injury as well. I think Whitney, Mercilus, I'm bracing for the worst news there. There's just very few things where if you have a bicep injury and you're out for the remainder of the game where there's good things. Usually that ends in a torn bicep, and I don't want to speculate here, but usually that's a torn bicep, and torn bicep is done for the year. So hopefully that's not the case. I have no idea. I'm not a doctor. I'm sure there's other things that you can do, but not a great sign for Mercilus, and I really thought he was playing good football coming over from Houston. It's a little bit of a bonus, being able to have him. He certainly wasn't somebody that was on the roster to start the season. It was a great pickup by Gutekunst, but you'd love to see him still be able to play. Hopefully it's something where he can return this season, but not holding my breath. Then the other, semi-good news with Rashan Gary is a hyperextended elbow, but the initial reports are that there was no breaks or ligament damage. They're going to run an MRI on Monday, but if they survived no breaks or ligament damage, that would be really, really big news for Rashan Gary. So hopefully that is the case. If Gary and Mercilus are out, Green Bay is very much down on their edge rusher depth chart. Remember, they just released Ladarius Hamilton over the weekend. They could probably pick him back up, but Green Bay was basically down to just, Preston Smith and, not much else. And Jonathan Garvin at edge at the end of that game. They used Oren Burks a little bit there, who has played some edge in the past, but again, just disappointing that they can't get out of a game. Just when you think that maybe they're going to start getting healthy and maybe Bakhtiari and Za'Darius can come back, you just see these new injuries. So Matt LaFleur mentioned that Jair Alexander's still a ways away, but hopefully he's going to play this year. He also mentioned that Za'Darius was probably at least a few weeks away, and then they kind of reevaluate. So doesn't necessarily seem that Green Bay is going to be getting any of these guys back in the near future. And I'd look at probably post-bye, maybe David Bakhtiari before then, but Green Bay is going to be as cautious as possible. But kudos to Green Bay once again. Despite all these injuries and COVID list and everything else, they remain on top of the NFC with a 8-2 record. So whatever they're doing it right. But Green Bay's going to need these players come playoff time. Couple other just small news and notes. Another missed field goal this time. Looked like this was on Mason Crosby, which I think, this may sound weird, but I think that's kind of a good thing. It looked like the snap was good. It looked like the protection was good. It looked like the hold was good. And yeah, you know what? I saw people already like, oh, Crosby's got to go. He's too old. Like, this is the first time I think that Crosby's had something that legitimately looked like it was his fault. So, and of course, it was a little bit windy too and things like that. Who knows? But Crosby's the least of my worries with the protection, the hold, the snap, everything like that, right? So if you tell me for the rest of the season that the protection, the snap, and the hold will be good, I have full faith that Mason Crosby will be just fine. It did look like this one was on him. I'm not, again, long snapper, holder, mechanic guy. I can't tell you 1,000,000% for sure, but the snap looked good. The hold looked good. It looked like it was tilted right. It looked like Crosby had a chance to make it and just didn't. The extra points for the remainder of the game, the 2 extra points, both look good. So hopefully things are getting cleaned up a little bit, but I'm sure still work to do. And again, this one looked on Mason Crosby. Looked like they used a little bit of a rotation at cornerback with King, Stokes, Rasul Douglas kind of rotating. King and Stokes got the start, with then Douglas playing a little bit more later. So definitely seems like they are going to rotate those guys in. I don't know if it's a keep it fresh. I don't know if it's just because they have all of them that are playing well, so why the heck not? But I thought all 3 of those corners played well in that rotation. Some standouts from this game, I thought Kevin King had another really nice game, of course, coming up with the interception. I give a ton of credit for A.J. Dillon for the way that he ran in this game again, running really hard. And then, of course, in the screen game as well, he was active. So getting touchdowns, getting first downs where there was very little room to run. He was a jackhammer in that game, and it's fun to see him when he has the ability to move piles despite there being no hole whatsoever. And then Adrian Amos, not only the interception, but ball hawking at the end of the game, making a big tackle on Gerald Everett by keying it and making a nice play in the open field. I just thought he had a fantastic game and one of his best games of the season, who has quietly been having another really nice season for Green Bay as well. On the flip side, I thought Allen Lazard had a tough game. A couple contested catches, the fourth down that he dropped, and then there was a beautiful throw by Rodgers right over the linebacker. It was kind of an extended catch by Lazard. He couldn't come up with that. Thought it was a little bit of a tough game for him. You might say, well, Andy, some of those were pretty contested, maybe tough catches. But as Allen Lazard, that's where you make your living. You're not I'm going to get free releases and gain a ton of separation guy. I'm not 4.340 guy. You have to win at the point of attack, because you're not the guy that's going to gain a ton of separation against corners in this league. It's just not your game. So you have to figure out ways to really make plays in contested catch situations. He didn't, and it cost Green Bay on a couple occasions. And then I thought Rodgers too, again, just a little bit off, not totally unexpected, but there'd be a couple throws that he would like to have back, and I'm sure he's going to bounce back against Minnesota next week. But again, I think a lot of that was just to do with not being with the team for 10 days straight, and you could tell he was tired, and Matt LaFleur mentioned the team was tired. So I think that's something to keep an eye on. I'm sure Matt LaFleur is going to be a little bit more cautious with the practice minutes this week, but with two big games left against Minnesota and LA, prior to the bye, he and his staff has to figure out a way to make sure that this team can, and especially with how beat up they are, to get through these last two games and try to do as well as possible before getting that much needed late bye rest week. So we'll see how that goes. But of note, Matt LaFleur did mention that he thought, the team is a little bit tired at this point in the season. So worth monitoring as they head to Minnesota. And then last but not least, when our team's going to learn not to do the belt. 3-0 game. Jamal Adams intercepts Aaron Rodgers. Of course, does the belt celebration, all in excitement. And from there on out, 14-0 run by Green Bay to end the game. And it's a 17-0 Packers win. You do the belt, you're probably going to lose more often than not. Someday, players will learn. Today was not the day. Nice pick, Jamal Adams. But of course, you ruined it with a belt celebration, and Green Bay went on to win 17-0. So I guess, Rodgers should maybe allow the other team to make a big play early just to see if they do the belt and kind of curse themselves for the remainder of the game, I guess. But nice game again for Jamal Adams in all seriousness, but Green Bay ultimately came out on top. That's going to do it for me today. Thank you so much for joining me. Always appreciate it. I'll be right back here tomorrow on the video version of the podcast. Of course, we'll have a brand new episode for you on the audio version as well. Make sure you are subscribed to both if you are not already. Hit that like button. But until next time, and as always, go Pack Go.